Hello and welcome. It is my pleasure to greet everybody and welcome you here today. We are up to the fourth of a five-part series titled Think Good and It Will Be Good by Rabbi Dr. Joel Zeff. It is a pleasure and an honor to be able to pass it over to you, Rabbi Zeff.
Okay, thank you so much. Each time that we've been meeting, and this is, as Rabbi Fishman just said, is the penultimate session. We've discussed a little bit about the biography of Rabbi Kook. Last week, we discussed his trip with the rabbinic leadership from Jerusalem that represented what's called the old Yishuv, the ultra-Orthodox population that had come in the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century to the land of Israel, settling most in the urban centers of Jerusalem, a little bit of Tiberias, Tzfat, Hebron, etc. And Rabbi Kook is in Jaffa. There's no Tel Aviv at this point. And Rabbi Kook then went on this trip with these other rabbis to visit the agricultural settlements that had been established along the coastal area of the land of Israel and up into the Galilee. And we discussed some of the remarkable experiences that happened during that time. I want to now return to Rabbi Kook and discuss what happened after 10 years of him living in the land of Israel. He came to, I say the land of Israel, not for religious purposes, just because the state of Israel didn't exist at that time. How about mandatory Palestine? Don't like that one either. Rabbi Fishman, I don't know. What kind of nomenclature can we use? It's a tough one.
Free State of Israel.
There we go. Free state Israel. I like that. That's good. So Rabbi Kook comes in 1904, and he's there for 10 years, a decade. Rabbi Kook had no desire ever to step foot outside Free State Israel, but he felt in 1914 a necessity to arouse the rabbinic leadership of Europe, where the masses of Jews lived, to encourage them to make the notion of aliyah, of moving to the land of Israel, a priority. Rabbi Kook felt in 1914 that this was an absolute necessity, in addition to whatever religious considerations he had. Perhaps he had some premonition of the insecurity of the Jews in Europe, dependent upon the goodwill of the host population, which is a very vulnerable position to be in. In any case, he went back in order to attend a world conference of Orthodox rabbis of an organization called Agudat Yisrael, or as they would call it, Agudas Yisrael. And Rabbi Kook sails back to Europe from Free State Israel. Bad timing, because as soon as he lands, World War I breaks out. And Rabbi Kook is trapped in Europe for the duration of the war. During this time, he spends half of it in Switzerland, where he was the house guest of a wealthy benefactor that gave him time to simply devote himself to writing, to thinking, to his own religious and intellectual, philosophical, spiritual development. And then for the second half of the war, he moved to London, where he became the rabbi of a synagogue there called Machzikei Hadass. I assume that's how they pronounced it, then not dot. So Machzikei Hadass. And he was there during a very important period, because this is towards the end of World War I, when the Balfour Declaration is issued, which expresses the I better be careful what I say. I have a citizen of the UK in front of me here. The Balfour Declaration, which expresses the sympathy and support of the British government for the establishment of a Jewish homeland in Palestine. Okay, so that's a very important period in the development of ultimately what becomes the state of Israel. After things settle down, Rabbi Kook returns to the land of Israel, but now things get complicated. Rabbi Kook was an extremely original thinker. And as long as he stayed in sort of the backwater of Jaffa, where he wasn't, to use the expression, in the face of the rabbinate of Jerusalem, those rabbis who had a very different worldview than Rabbi Kook. Of course, they shared the fundamentals of Judaism and their piety and great scholarship. But Rabbi Kook, as we're seeing, had a very fresh perspective and revolutionary perspective on many things. So as long as he was in Jaffa, he was sort of out of the way, and there were no major explosions in terms of Rav Kook's relationship with the rabbinic leadership of the old Jewish community, the old Yishuv in the land of Israel. However, when he returns to the land of Israel, he's offered a position. The land of Israel now is under a British mandate, and there's a desire to establish an official chief rabbinate. And that position is offered to none other than Rabbi Kook. And that means he would have to leave Jaffa and he'd have to move to Jerusalem. Now, moving to Jerusalem means that he is going to be in the face of a very deeply entrenched ultra-Orthodox rabbinate, which allowed for many great tensions. I could talk for a long time about those tensions and how Rabbi Kook dealt with them. It's really fascinating. In some ways, it's an incredible testimony to Rabbi Kook's greatness, how he never allowed any of the vicious attacks upon him to provoke some type of reciprocal counterattack. He always stayed above the fray, no matter what, which is quite something. I certainly am not capable of doing something like that. And it's a testimony to his noble character. I want to focus on one particular incident, which was particularly painful. In 1920, Rabbi Kook publishes a little book, and this little book is called Orot, which means lights. Now, there's something about this book which apparently disturbed a lot of rabbis. I'd like to read for you just a short sentence from a counter pamphlet that was published by some of the rabbis in Jerusalem. This pamphlet was called Kol Shofar, the voice of the shofar, of the ritual horn. And the reason that this pamphlet attacking Rabbi Kook in his book Orot, Lights, was called Kol Shofar, the voice of a shofar, is because when you excommunicate somebody, a shofar is blown. So this pamphlet was sort of a symbolic excommunication of Rabbi Kook, who's the chief rabbi of pre-state Israel. I'll read you one selection from the book, this pamphlet, attacking Rabbi Kook. It says the following: there was brought before us a recently published booklet by a local rabbi. That phraseology is very interesting. Local rabbi, he happens to be the chief rabbi. Okay. And then it goes on. We were astonished to see gross things foreign to the entire Torah of Israel. Deathly poison is in it. Well, I guess they didn't have a strong opinion about Rabbi Kook's book. And this is definitely a good way to market Rabbi Kook's book. If you have a bunch of rabbis that say that it has gross things foreign to the entire Torah of Israel and deathly poison is in it, who would not want to read that book that is characterized in such a extreme manner? All hell broke loose at this point between Rabbi Kook and these other rabbis. It happened to be that probably the most famous rabbi, rabbinic leader in Eastern Europe, who was a leader of the largest Hasidic movement. He was called the Ger Rebbe. Rabbi Avraham Mordechai Alter, that was his name, happened to come to Israel, it was pre-state Israel at that point. He was there to explore the possibility of moving his followers in mass. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of, this was the largest Hasidic group, and until this day, that particular group exists, Ger Hasidim, and they're very powerful, actually in the state of Israel, very powerful politically. He was in the land of Israel exploring the idea of moving the center of gravity of his Hasidic movement to the land of Israel. And since he was well respected, he was asked to mediate this conflict between the Jerusalem rabbis and Rabbi Kook. He had long meetings with Rabbi Kook, long meetings with the other rabbis. And he says that he brokered an agreement between both sides where those rabbis who had attacked Rabbi Kook said that they would cease their ad hominem attacks on Rabbi Kook, and that Rabbi Kook would express his regret at publishing things which were offensive and upsetting to the other rabbis. Of course, this agreement didn't work out. And the Ger Rebbe offered in his analysis of the situation some biting criticism of Rabbi Kook, though he praised Rabbi Kook's piety and his learning. But he also said some pretty critical things about this book, Orot. So I want to read one more passage from the pamphlet that attacked Rabbi Kook, and then I want to read a couple of sentences from the Ger Rebbe's letter that he wrote summarizing the situation between Rabbi Kook and his opponents. So this pamphlet, Kol Shofar, says the following: even those young men and women who engage in athletics and frivolity, known to us to be Sabbath desecrators and immoral, he, Rabbi Kook, claims to be serving holy service, Avodat HaKodesh in Hebrew. And the Ger Rebbe, in his summation of his discussions with Rabbi Kook and the opponents, seems to harp on the same point. And the Ger Rebbe writes, to glorify the athletics of sinners and to flatter them in such a shocking manner, to extend peace to them as if they were ministering angels, this outrages the pious beyond description. And that was written by somebody who actually had positive feelings towards Rabbi Kook in general. Now, I wonder if you're curious what Rabbi Kook said in this work, Orot, that was so offensive to these other rabbis, including the Ger Rebbe, who, like I said, didn't really take sides. He was well respected by everybody, and he respected Rabbi Kook. What did he say in this work, Orot, which was so outrageous? Well, we're going to do a little screen share, and we're going to take a look at this passage. But don't share it with anybody else, because what goes on in Montreal stays in Montreal, or in the Zoom, at least. We don't want to offend anybody by taking a look at what Rabbi Kook said that was so triggering. So we'll do a screen share here. Okay. Everybody see that? Okay.
Yes.
So Rabbi Kook says the following: great is the bodily demand made upon us. We require a healthy body. We have dealt much with spirituality, but we have forgotten the holiness of the body. We have abandoned health and bodily strength. We have forgotten that we have holy flesh, no less than we have a Holy Spirit. We have left practical life, the clarification of the senses, and the bond with bodily sensory existence due to a fallen fear. We're going to explain everything in a minute. Due to a lack of faith in the holiness of the land. Okay, so let's now back up and try to appreciate what he's addressing here. Rabbi Kook is criticizing orthodoxy. He's criticizing traditional Jewish life. And he is claiming that a skewed existence has now characterized Jewish spirituality, that We forgot the holiness of the body. We forgot about health, physical strength. We forgot that even the flesh can be holy, no less than the Holy Spirit. We've left practical life. Practical life, he means like hands. You know, the Jews have hands. I know that's shocking news. Hands. The clarification of the senses. Aesthetics. That's what he's referring to here. The arts. Music, painting, sculpture. See, now it's hard for us to appreciate this. We're living 100 years later, and there are plenty of Jewish musicians and painters, etc. And if you live in Los Angeles, which I used to, and you needed to have a plumber or electrician come, it's a good chance it would be an Israeli who lived in Los Angeles. But that's a contemporary development, which is very much a result of the rise of the state of Israel. Now, if you go back to our discussion last week, where we had this photograph of Rabbi Kook and his other rabbinic colleagues that had this group picture taken with these secular pioneers. So the secular pioneers are dressed in work clothes with their axes and hoes, etc. Then they're all in white. And then it wasn't hard to figure out who the rabbis were. They're the ones who are all in black. And those rabbis, with the exclusion of Rabbi Kook, when they looked at these secular pioneers, the secular pioneers are glorifying labor. They're glorifying physical strength. They're glorifying return to the land. It wasn't just simply a necessity to create these kibbutzim, moshavim, etc., these agricultural settlements. It was a matter of philosophy. It was a matter of transforming the sensibility of what it means to be a Jew, to rediscover that we have hands, that we have a body, that a Jew can be an artist, a painter, a musician, a sculptor, etc. Now, Rabbi Kook says that this is all due to a fallen fear, due to a lack of faith in the holiness of the land. What does he mean by fallen fear? The notion of fear of God, fear of heaven, is a very central notion in Jewish life. But Rabbi Kook claims that fear of God can be distorted. It can be a fallen fear of God. If fear of God means the fear of a fulsome engagement with the world, with our bodies, then that's a fear of God which causes us to retreat, to self-constrict, to see and understand Jewish life as something which is solely spiritual, an experience that is exclusively one of the mind and perhaps of the heart, but not of the hands, with the exception of doing the practical commandments, but not a fulsome engagement with life, with a vigorous involvement with the land, with life. Now, how did this happen? Rabbi Kook feels there's a historical explanation for it. The Jews are living an aberrant existence. If I were to take 10 million Frenchmen and remove them from France and scatter them in different locations in the world, even some moving to a place like Montreal where they can perhaps even still speak French, the identification, the self-identification with France and French culture, etc., I would imagine is not going to last for very long, even though perhaps the language may last for a certain amount of time. Because nations are a function of geography. The Jewish people lost our geography. After the destruction of the Second Temple in the year 70 and the gradual dispersal of the Jewish population in the land of Israel, Jews are dispersed all over the world. They maintain their collective identity, but they no longer have the expressions of being landed. There's no Jewish economy. There's no Jewish political system. Jews are guests in host countries that would tolerate them for various lengths of time until they're booted out and have to find another host country. Jews are limited in the professions that they can practice. And perhaps, from Rabbi Kook's perspective, landedness is an expression on a collective level of the Jewish body. Just like an individual has a spirit and a body, a soul and a body, perhaps we could say, so too a nation has a spirit, its culture, its values, but it also has a body. It has its territory. It has its political system. It has an army. It has an economic system. These are all expressions of the collective body of a nation. Once the Jews go into exile, they're robbed of their body. They exist as souls without a body. Now, this is a critique which was offered by those Jews who had become secular and criticized Jewish tradition. And Rabbi Kook is echoing what seems to be the exact same critique. Whose side is Rabbi Kook on? Is he a proponent of traditional Judaism, of a passionate commitment to traditional Judaism? Or he is on the side of those who seek to radically transform what it means to be a Jew using a model that is perceived as being very far from the values and way of life of traditional Judaism? I'd like to explore just a bit when Rabbi Kook says that we've left practical life, the clarification of the senses, and the bond with bodily sensory existence. This is very profound. It means that Jews don't feel embodied, neither collectively, nor as individuals. Now, I wasn't alive 100 years ago, though I sometimes feel like it, but I wasn't. But in my own lifetime and in my own existence, I have to admit my sins. I've inherited the sense of being disembodied, of living in my head. This is a particular disease affecting rabbis, and I don't want to speak for Rabbi Fishman, but rabbis largely are involved in the life of the intellect, of the soul. I don't know what we do if we had to change a light bulb. Maybe our wives know how to do it. So I just want to share with you just two brief anecdotes. I grew up in the holy city of Sacramento, California. Sacramento comes from the word sacred. And let's say my father was a physician. The only thing that I ever saw my father do with his hands was surgery. Once he took me into a surgery, I actually watched him do surgery one time. I thought I'd become a doctor. But if you want to have something done in your house, you call Tony or Jose. You don't do it yourself. Sacramento doesn't have a lot of Jews there. On Sunday morning, when we were reading the New York Times and eating bagels, our non-Jewish neighbors were washing their cars, mowing their lawn. If the Zeff family wanted to have their car washed, they bring it to a car wash. You know, and we have a gardener. You don't mow your lawn by yourself because Jews don't have hands. In the past few years, when I've become much more interested in the issue that we're going to be talking about today, that we are talking about today, there's an exercise which we're not going to do today of trying to connect ourselves to our body. And it's called a body scan. We're supposed to scan our body from our toes to our head, starting with our toes. What do you feel in your toes? What do you feel in the palms of the arches of your feet, your ankles? And I was doing this with somebody, and they said, like, what do you feel in your calves? It's like, and I was trying hard. I didn't feel anything. The only reason I knew I had calves because I could see them. But I had no experiential connection with the fact that I had legs. The notion of what do you feel in your calves, to me, was just a non sequitur. It's a symptom of this disconnect between spirit and mind and the body. That disease of being disembodied, which Rabbi Kook claims is not simply a malady that affects individual Jews like me, but characterizes the development of Jewish society as a result of exile. We're not only exiled from the land, we're exiled from our bodiliness. And Rabbi Kook goes on. Oh, I'm sorry. So I want to show you something remarkable. This notion of relating to bodiliness and how Rabbi Kook calls for a radical reframing, a radical rediscovery of body. I'm sure that you're familiar with the famous biblical book, The Song of Songs. Just want to give you a little sense of what's in there. Your rounded thighs are like jewels, the work of a master hand. Your navel is a rounded bowl that never lacks mixed wine. Your belly is a heap of wheat encircled with lilies. Your two breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle. How fair and pleasant you are, O loved one, delectable maiden. You are stately as a palm tree, and your breasts are like its clusters. I say, I will climb the palm tree and lay hold of its branches. Oh, may your breasts be like clusters of the vine, and the scent of your breath like apples, and your kisses like the best wine that goes down smoothly, gliding over lips and teeth. Come, my beloved, let us go forth into the fields. There I will give you my love. That's in the Bible. Now, of course, in traditional rabbinic view, this is understood as a metaphor for the relationship between God and Israel. The images are rather striking. And there's discussion in rabbinic literature from 2,000 years ago. Should this book, Song of Songs, be considered to be Holy Scripture? And there's an opinion quoted in this work from 2,000 years ago, the Mishnah. Rabbi Akiva said, the entire world is in itself not as worthwhile as the day in which the Song of Songs was given to Israel. All scripture is holy, but the Song of Songs is the Holy of Holies. So Rabbi Akiva apparently, and Rabbi Akiva is living in the land of Israel. He's living at a time when Jews are still embodied. The Song of Songs represents radical embodiment. It's extremely erotic. Rabbi Kook wrote an introduction to the Song of Songs. It's long. We're just going to read a couple of sentences. He talks about the power of this poetry in Song of Songs. And he says, literature, painting, and sculpture are meant to actualize all the spiritual concepts which are embedded in the depths of the human soul. So long as even one drawing, even one tracing, which is revealed in the depths of the soul, has not been actualized on canvas, on paper, the service of art is obligated to bring it into the light of day. This is an ultra-Orthodox rabbi who is saying we have to rediscover the world, re-embody ourselves. And the arts which employ the five senses are an expression of that embodiment. And Rabbi Kook is saying that it is a spiritual obligation. When he talks about the service of art is obligated to bring it to the light of day, that even if there is a musical note, an artistic line, which has not been given artistic expression, it is a spiritual religious obligation to bring it to the light of day, to give it artistic expression. This is a call for re-embodiment. We're not just a head. We're not just a soul. We're a body. And that embodiment empowers us to be connected to the world around us in a fulsome manner. Right before Rabbi Kook died, he gave an interview with a London newspaper, the Jewish Chronicle. He died in 1935. This is right before he died. And in this article, the journalist quoted Rabbi Kook as saying the following. Remember, I told you that the second half of World War I, he was in London, Rabbi Kook. When I lived in London, I would visit the National Gallery, and the paintings that I loved the most were those of Rembrandt. In my opinion, Rembrandt was a saint. When I first saw Rembrandt's paintings, they reminded me of the rabbinic Talmudic statement about the creation of light, which in the creation story is on the first day of creation, but sun and moon were only created on Wednesday, the fourth day of creation. So what's this light that was created on the first day? When God created the light, it was so strong and luminous that it was possible to see from one end of the world to the other. And God feared that the wicked would make use of it. What did he do? This is all quoting from the Talmud. He secreted it away for the righteous in the world to come. Now, Rabbi Kook comments, but from time to time, there are great men who God blesses with a vision of that hidden light. I believe Rembrandt was one of them, and the light of his paintings is that light which God created on Genesis Day. What a glorious comment. What a glorious affirmation of the sensory experience of existence. Of the redeeming nature of reintegrating our mind and soul back into bodiliness. We enter back into the work wrote of Rav Kook. He says the following: all of our teshuvah. Now, teshuvah, as we explained in our first session, means return. It classically means repentance, but here he's using it in a much larger sense. Spiritual return, which he understands as renaissance, and physical return, meaning the geographic return of the Jewish people to recreate a homeland in the land of Israel. The rebirth of the Jewish people collectively. All of our return will only succeed if, together with the splendor of its spirituality, there is as well a physical return, a rediscovery of physicality, of our body, which fashions healthy blood, healthy flesh, solid, strong bodies, a fiery spirit shining forth upon strong muscles. And within the sanctified body will radiate the weakened soul, evocative of the notion of bodily resurrection. One of the tenets of Jewish faith, that at the end of days, that the dead will rise again, that the return to the land of Israel is the Jewish people experiencing resurrection, the rediscovery, the re-entrance into bodily existence as individuals and as a collective. Now, Rabbi Kook explicitly addressed himself to the non-religious young pioneers in the land of Israel, who emphasized this bodiliness. And he says, the exercise done by the youth of Israel in the land of Israel in order to strengthen their bodies, to become strong sons for the nation, perfects the spiritual power of the supernal righteous who engage in the unification of the holy names in order to accentuate the divine light in the world. That's a very hard sentence. Rabbi Kook is saying something radical. He's saying not only do each of us have to rediscover our bodies, but that these secular, non-religious, and even anti-religious pioneers, what they're doing in rediscovering bodiliness is actually bringing greater strength and power to the ultra-Orthodox who are engaged in exclusively spiritual activities. The revelation of one light cannot exist without the other. The revelation of a spiritual light and the revelation of a bodily light are interdependent. To the extent that we re-enter the body, we reinvigorate the soul as well. And now for a sentence which triggered the ultra-Orthodox rabbinate in ways which are truly profound. He says, this holy service, meaning becoming strong, re-entering the body, it elevates the divine presence, in Hebrew Shekhinah, ever upwards, as its elevation through the songs and praises uttered by King David in the book of Psalms. Now, it may be hard for us to appreciate how radical that statement is. You know, we recite Psalms in traditional Judaism every morning. Part of the prayer service, there's a whole passage there of which is a collection of various Psalms. This is part of the spiritual practice of traditional Judaism. Psalms traditionally understood as being penned by King David. And Rabbi Kook is saying that returning to one's body, caring for one's body, rediscovering one's body, strengthening one's body is causing the elevation of the divine presence. Like the songs and praises in the book of Psalms. Now, Rabbi Kook now actually tries to temper slightly that point. And he says, it's a little bit mystical, the elevation brought about by the supernal intentions, that's referring to the mystical contemplations of the rabbis, affects the inner soul, while the actions that strengthen the body of individuals for the sake of the collective bring about the elevation of the external spirit. So he says they work together, the spiritual and the physical. One affects the inner soul, whatever that is, not for today to discuss, and what affects the external spirit. Okay, so they're not precisely the same, but they're both necessary. Both of them together perfect the network of holiness in its entirety through the accentuation of the character of the nation, through that brief passage upon which the entire body of the Torah depends, and all your ways know him. You know, I just need to explain this last sentence here. There's a passage in the Talmud in which the rabbis asked the following question: can we point to a verse in scripture which is the very foundation of Judaism? And the rabbis in the Talmud answer yes. There's a verse in the book of Proverbs that says, in all your ways know him. It's a verse, Proverbs, and the Talmud says that that's the very foundation of Jewish tradition. And Rabbi Kook says, what does that mean, in all your ways know him? It means that to know God exclusively through the mind and the emotions, as if the body is irrelevant or non-existent, is a distortion of the very foundation of Judaism as defined by the Talmud itself. Quoting that verse from Proverbs, in all your ways know him. Through the reunification of the mind, the spirit, and the body. Only by becoming re-embodied, resurrected from the dead, only then can we know God in all our ways, with our hands as well as our voice. Okay. What I'd like to do is to discuss the sort of the contemporary ramifications of Rabbi Kook's thinking and the role it plays in our own emotional, mental health. You don't have to be an Orthodox rabbi living 100 years ago, or someone who grew up in Sacramento, to suffer from the malaise of being disembodied. It's something that affects many of us. And that truncating of our existence, where we live in the mind, as if that is the center and essence of who we are, without that feeling of being integrated within a body, that alone is not only treason against the foundational belief of Judaism, that in all your ways know him, but it's the source of much of our misery. How so? It's a commonly accepted truism. Truism doesn't mean it's not true. It means it's just something that is an accepted axiom. Depression is largely a function of rumination about yesterday. Anxiety is fear about tomorrow. So we have this thing up here between our ears. It's called a brain. And when the center of our existence is in that brain, which is not anchored in the body, it's all over the map in time. It's ruminating about yesterday, and it's fearing tomorrow. And that is our state of existence: depression and anxiety. Because of being disembodied. The mind floating into the past with all of the memories that produce depression, and fearing what tomorrow will bring. Yesterday's gone, and tomorrow hasn't happened. Can you imagine how liberating it would be if we could become re-embodied and anchor our mind back into our body and be present now? The power of now. Freed from yesterday and tomorrow. That's the power of re-embodiment. The body, the sensory experience, the connection with external reality is that anchor which anchors us in the present. The mind itself on its own refuses to become anchored. It's trying to keep us safe. That's the way evolution created the mind that's always scanning for danger. What mistakes were made in the past? What horrible things can happen in the future? If we could anchor it into our direct experience of reality right now, we're free to act. We're free to accomplish those things which align with our deepest values, disencumbered from depression and anxiety. So I want to just spend a moment just, how do we reconnect? How do we take Rabbi Kook's call to become re-embodied in our individual lives? He doesn't say how to do it. He just says, do it. He laments the lack of being embodied. There's a lot of attention paid to this in contemporary therapeutic thinking. Just want to introduce you to a small exercise here. Maybe we could do it together. So this is from work that's called The Happiness Trap, written by Dr. Russ Harris. It's a really wonderful book. I recommend it, The Happiness Trap by Russ Harris. He's a physician from the UK, but he's lived in Australia for many years, and he's one of the foremost proponents of ACT therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, which is part of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. It just says the following. Let's see if we can discover our senses again, because our senses are the way we connect with the external physical reality. Maybe we can try this together. Look around. Can we name 5 things that we could see? I see a printer. I see my emergency cup of coffee. I see a microphone. I see a plant over there. I see a fan. I see a door. I see a window. See, this may sound silly, but if you're anything like me, as my wife likes to say, I'm the most observant rabbi that she's ever met. I'm completely oblivious to the reality right in front of my face. Just to notice 5 things right now. How about here? You name 3 things that you can hear right now. Just listen. I hear the hum of a fan underneath the computer, keeping it cool. I hear the faint sounds of people that are outside in the lawn. It's like a communal lawn out here. I can hear a rumble of jets. There's a war going on. How about feel? Can you feel anything? Tactile. How about if maybe there's a fan on, maybe or a breeze on your skin? Let's keep doing that. How about our body? What does it feel like you're seated in a chair? What does that feel like, the body seated on the chair? What does that feel like, the part of your body that's resting on the chair, or your back against the support of the chair? And to do a body scan, which we're not going to do. I mentioned that before. Like, how do your feet feel in your shoes? What does that feel like? How about breathing? We're actually breathing. We notice that when we exhale, creates a little bit of perhaps a sensation on the upper lip. You notice the chest that expands when we inhale, it contracts when we exhale. You just pay attention to that for a second. We don't notice these things because we're disembodied. That's a small exercise. To become re-embodied, as Rav Kook calls us to become, requires retraining ourselves, how we experience reality. If we were to learn how to play tennis or learn how to play a musical instrument, it takes work. If anybody's interested in this type of thing, do this a few times a day. And when you're waiting in line, listen. Smell. Any smells? Name 5 things you can see. Is there any tactile sense? What does your body feel like? How do your clothes fitting on you now? What do your shoes, what do your feet feel like inside your shoes? There are many, many exercises to be able to implement Rav Kook's call to become re-embodied. There's something we don't have time to do. I thought about possibly doing it, but we don't have time because I have a hard time knowing that I have legs. There's a muscle relaxation exercise, which I have a link here, and I can send this whole source sheet here. Anybody would like it, I can make it available. I'll send it to Rabbi Fishman. He can make it available to you. There's a wonderful, wonderful progressive muscle relaxation where it works. I do this every day, where you go from your entire body and you stress the muscle, clench it, and then let go. And then you go to another part of your body and clench the muscle and let go. You go through the entire body. And then I have a body. I could feel it. Because you took every muscle group going from your head to your toes. And you tightened it and then relaxed it. And you become re-embodied. I want to end with a poem from Rabbi Kook. Rabbi Kook here in this poem is addressing this notion of embodiment, because embodiment doesn't just mean that we discover we have a body and that there's this sense of unity between our intellectual, spiritual aspects and our physical aspects, but it also means we connect to the world. The world is material, like our body's material. By reconnecting to our body, we're able to reconnect to the world instead of being alienated, removed, disconnected from the world around us. To feel that connection once again. And Rabbi Kook portrays here a kind of a dialogue between the world, the material reality, and ourselves. Let's read it. All existence whispers to me its secret. I have life to offer, vitality, energy. Take, please take. If you have a heart and your heart is flowing with red blood that has not been poisoned by the toxins of despair, the despair of seeing the world around you as foul, as threatening, by that fallen fear Rav Kook talked about. But if your heart is uncircumcised, that we've lost the ability to sense, and beauty holds no spell for you, then existence whispers to me, away from me, away. To you I am closed, locked, forbidden. If every gentle sound, listen, every living beauty stirs you not to a holy song, but instead awakens in you a stream of strange fire, away from me, away. To you I am closed, locked, forbidden. Now, Rav Kook refers now to the Renaissance of the Jewish people returning to its land, returning to its collective body, returning to being embodied, connected to the world in a holistic fashion. And a generation will awaken, and sing to beauty and to life, and draw unending delight from the dew of heaven, and from the splendor of the Carmel, the mountain range near Haifa, and the Sharon. The wealth of life's secrets will be heard by the ears of a people once again alive. And from the Eden of her song and the beauty of her life, a holy light will fill all. And all of existence will murmur lovingly to us, my beloved, I am yours, I am yours. Rabbi Kook is asking us to fundamentally reconstruct our sense of our own existence, to rediscover that we have hands, to rediscover the senses, and to reconnect to the world around us. And the return to the land is return to an embodied existence. And then we can hear that voice murmur lovingly to us as existence, as the earth calls to us, my beloved, I am yours. I am yours. With that, I bid you adieu, and I look forward to our next and last session. And thank you, Rabbi Fishman, for hosting this.
Thank you so much. That was such a powerful poem to end off on. And I will simply make the request for the Hebrew as well.
Absolutely. It's done.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. It's lovely to see all of you. We wish you well during these challenging days. And thank you, Rabbi Zev, so much for that beautiful presentation.
My pleasure.
Be well, everybody.